This week, we are less than a week away from WWE's Crown Jewel in Australia. An AEW star has her sights set on Canadian gold, and author Brian R. Solomon is here to talk all about the life and times of the great Gorilla Monsoon. This is McGuire on Wrestling. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome to McGuire on Wrestling.
Allow me to reintroduce myself
with Mike McGuire.
Stand up, son. Let me take a good look at you.
This guy's a serious professional.
You know what I want to talk about? Yeah. Well, the professional wrestling.
Do I have your attention now?
Done shilling. I'm done shilling, okay?
Let's get this show on the road.
I love professional wrestling.
We've got a packed show for you today. Another edition of our new segment, Have Your Say, is going to be featuring a guy from Toronto I met almost 3 years ago to the day, as a matter of fact. He's a wrestling fan. He's also a touring stand-up comic. And he's also a member of the Celebrate Wrestling family. Ernie Vicente joins us on the show today. Also, Brian R. Solomon. I didn't call him Brian R. Solomon when we actually had the interview. I don't know. It just feels weird when you call somebody by their middle initial as you're actually talking to them. But either way, he's here, and we had a fantastic conversation about his new book, Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon. So we're going to talk a little bit of classic wrestling and maybe some behind-the-scenes stuff from the WWE way back in the day, before Vince Jr. owned it, let alone TKO or anything like that. And you're going to hear some stories, but also some pretty cool facts about, if you're like me and you're my age, you grew up with Gorilla Monsoon mostly as the kind of gentle giant commentator, you know, the blue sunglasses, the funny little quips back and forth with him and Bobby Heenan or Jesse Ventura, guys like that. In fact, getting ready for today's show, I was just looking back for some old Gorilla-isms, because the book has a glossary of Gorilla-isms, you know, only things that Gorilla Monsoon would say or kind of explain. And so I went back and I watched some of WrestleMania 6 from Toronto, because A, it's one of my favorite WrestleManias, and B, Gorilla's just in prime form. Him and Bobby always get all the credit in the world, as they should, but him and Jesse Ventura always had a pretty good chemistry and flow as well. So we're going to talk to Brian all about that, and I hope you really enjoy the conversation. I know I did. I'm pretty sure Brian did, and looking forward to having Brian on again in the future if he's willing, because we just had a great talk about some historic times in pro wrestling. There's a few shows coming up I want to let you know that I'm going to be at. Hope to see you at as well. Of course, October 17th, Dungeon Wrestling returns with WrestleWeen in the Victoria Pavilion in Calgary. Tickets are on sale for that now at dungeonwrestling.ca. Also, Pure Power Wrestling in Lethbridge, Alberta has a show coming up on October 25th. Tickets at purepowerwrestling.ca. And Canadian Wrestling's Elite going all across Western Canada again. They're doing an Eastern Canada leg right now, but in November, they'll be coming through. They've got their big Rumble to Remember, which comes up in November as well. I am not part of it. Somebody asked if I was. No, I will not be doing any rumbling of any kind. However, I will be at their Medicine Hat show coming up in November. And for all the details, you can find it at our Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page. I invite you to join there. We'll talk about other ways you can support the show in just a bit, but we got a lot to get to today. So let's start with some of the biggest stories of the week. We call it The Five.
You want to hear the breaking news?
Well, this Friday and Saturday are going to be a weird weekend to watch wrestling, because you're actually going to have a chance to start your day watching a WWE PLE on Saturday and then continue with your life if you're here on the North American side of the world, because in a rare twist for us Canadians and North Americans in general, the show actually starts at 8 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're in Alberta, where I'm at, that's 6 a.m. If you're in BC, that's 5 a.m. You might just wake up and watch it later on the Netflix. Now, of course, in the US, it's going to be streaming on ESPN. And as of production of today's show, here are the 4 matches we know of for sure. For the Men's Crown Jewel Championship, Cody Rhodes, SmackDown's undisputed WWE champions, faces Raw's World Heavyweight Champion in Seth freaking Rollins. Stephanie Vaquer from Raw, and being the world champion there, takes on Tiffany Stratton from SmackDown as WWE champion for the Women's Crown Jewel Championship. Rhea Ripley and Io Sky tag against Asuka and Kairi Sane. And John Cena in one of his final matches and appearances, will face AJ Styles in a one-on-one match. There's likely to be at least one or two more matches added to this week, so we'll see what shakes down before Saturday morning. I've been telling you for a while about Winnipeg's WPW. I've been keeping really close tabs on these guys for a while. They've got a really cool show that's been building for years with some local stars and also talents they bring in from all over the world. Well, they have their annual Rumble in the Burt coming up, and what's most interesting is now a big match has been added as AEW's Mercedes Moné looks to secure her 10th simultaneous championship as she takes on Canada's Jody Threat. Now, this is going to be for the WPW Women's Championship, and the match is coming up fast on October the 19th. It's a Sunday. Tickets are at Ticketmaster, and it takes place at the Burton Cummings Theater in Winnipeg. Now, this could be a record-setting or at least record-tying event. We'll tell you why with Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer coming up in just a few minutes. Well, as you probably heard this week, WWE and TKO announced the ticket packages for John Cena's last match at Saturday night's main event in Washington, D.C. The event is taking place December the 13th, and right now, all that's up for grabs are tickets by way of VIP packages. So, if you have the cash and want to take part in this event, make sure you have a ticket now. It starts at $1,850 per person, and that includes a pre-show hospitality event with appearances by John Cena and WWE stars, as well as a John Cena gift bag and memorabilia display access. What that means exactly, I'm not 100% sure. They haven't gone into more details on that yet. However, that only gets you lower or upper level seating. If you want to take it up a notch and get yourself a suite, then you can get a suite seat for $3,000 each. That includes your food and beverage for the night. You also get access to that event. By the way, those events, the hospitality events, don't include meet and greets. Okay, if you want to go to that level, then you have to go up to what they call the championship package, which is a mere $8,500 US per person. That gets you a ringside photo opportunity. You get a chance to meet John Cena and get a photo opportunity. You also get tickets to The Undertaker's podcast, 6 Feet Under, and a few other features as well. $8,500 US per person. Man, it must be nice to be living that life. Like most Canadians, though, I'll be watching it for free on YouTube because I can't see me ever having that kind of money to drop on this. The night before that show is AEW's Wrestle Dream, whose card is starting to fill up. We have the AEW Women's Championship being defended by Chris Statlander against timeless Toni Storm. The World Championship sees Hangman Adam Page defending against Samoa Joe, and Darby Allin will face Jon Moxley in what I'm sure will be a perfectly reasonable and highly technical I Quit match. Of course, AEW has a bunch of character development going on right now with a bunch of character turns and maybe even a reunion of the Acclaimed. We'll talk more with Dave about that show as well. And hot off of hosting Saturday Night Live this past weekend and being announced to be the halftime star for the Super Bowl, Bad Bunny reportedly has the itch to get back into a wrestling ring. Damian Priest was doing interviews and mentioned that Bad Bunny has, quote, got the itch to return to a WWE ring. What that means? Nobody knows, obviously, but given his performance at Backlash in Puerto Rico about a year and a half ago, who knows what could be in store for the Grammy award-winning star. Still to come on the show, we will talk to the Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer about some of the events happening in wrestling this past week. And Brian R. Solomon, former magazine writer and author for WWE, joins us to talk all about his new book, and it is a great one, called Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
The alternate commentary table, ACT, brought to you by the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. Listen, it's Mitch, it's Dimitri. We got this little pod thing that we do every single week where we talk about the week in wrestling and the way in which we do it from the other side of the railing, right, Mitch?
I like that.
We're coming at it because we love it, we hate it. The alternate commentary table, ACT. Download it anywhere where you're getting your podcasts.
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, I definitely want to focus on getting more of your voices on the show, and this week I was very excited to do that with a guy who you'll discover I met by chance years ago, and he just happened to be touring through my area. He lives in Toronto, but has been across Canada and around the world, as you'll hear. This is another edition of McGuire on Wrestling's Have Your Say with Ernie Vicente. When I first met this guy, it was when I had shown up to Toronto for the first AEW Canada tapings, and that was Dynamite and Rampage at the Coca-Cola Stadium, right? Or Coliseum.
Yeah, Coca-Cola something.
Stops me out there, says, man, I listen to you all the time. I was blown away because the last thing I was expecting was to come all the way out to Toronto and have somebody actually stop me and say hello from recognizing me from doing the wrestling radio show. But Ernie Vicente, it's great to see you again, pal.
Oh my God, thank you. I love your show. You know what I mean? I follow you guys ever since like Sunday night's main event. Keep it going, guys. I love you guys.
You're doing stand-up here in Lethbridge tonight, so you told me you're coming. I was like, dude, I will be there because, again, you've been just a great guy to know. And it's funny, I've kind of seen you develop, because that was already like 3-4 years ago now, something like that. And I've seen you developing with this stand-up comedy, and you're touring everywhere. So we had Al Snow on the show last week talking about how there's so many comparisons between wrestling and comedy. You hear a lot of stories about wrestling. How many years have you been on the road doing comedy now?
Well, I started in 2008, but I became like full-time like 10 years ago. Yeah. So it's exactly like wrestling, because you start off in like small gyms, you know, small clubs, and then you work your way to like big theaters and like eventually like a big arena. You know what I mean? It's great.
And then there's spot shows along the way. Like, you know, you do hit the small towns and smaller markets and get to really try your wares. You know, it'd be comparable, I guess, like trying new moves, right? You're working out new jokes.
Exactly. Yeah, we tour, and then we do. Sometimes like when you start out, sometimes there's like 5 people in the audience, but like we just love the craft, like wrestling. We don't do it just for the money. You know what I mean? The money's great, but like we just love making people laugh. It's the best. It's just like wrestling. We love they probably love like entertaining the fans.
Sticking to the wrestling conversation here, when did you start out as a fan, and what do you have as like your first wrestling memories?
Oh my God, I was a kid because my grandpa, my Lolo, he loved wrestling, so he would always watch it. I remember I think my first event was like WrestleMania 5. Is that with the Mega Powers?
Yeah, that was Hogan Savage. Yep.
That was so good because I'm like, remember like they pushed Elizabeth down. I'm like, is she okay? Is this real? Because we're kids, right? We don't know, but like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man, larger than life. So like once after that, like I was hooked.
Lust in his eyes, Hogan. Lust in your eyes.
Oh, my God.
You talk about wrestling in some of your stand-up. You will never, ever, ever be forgiven for what you've done to the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12 for me. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to spoil the joke at all. You need to see Ernie Vicente do his set. But do you do a lot of wrestling stuff?
I do it once in a while, but like, because Toronto, there's so many wrestling fans. And like, so because everyone knows who Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart obviously is, but especially because like I did those jokes because I knew Mike McGuire was in the audience. So
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, no. Even a couple years ago when like John and Way, they were at Comedy Bar, and then I was doing my like Rey Mysterio jokes and stuff. yeah.
You know what's awesome about that though is that you told it in such a way that hardcore wrestling nerd Mike is going to know it, but you explained who Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart were perfectly to the people that didn't have a clue who they were here. So it's great to be able to communicate that in a different way, I suppose, as your fandom, right?
Oh my God, yeah! I try to make it like, because like you know, like the joke, I'll post it up later, so just for Mike, and hopefully you can show Bret Hart, who's my actual favorite wrestler. In the joke, I was just lying, just for comedic purposes. So Bret, you're the best, buddy. I love you.
Good cover. And boy, when you talk about Shawn Michaels being your favorite wrestler in the joke, boy, is he ever your favorite wrestler. But what are you watching for wrestling these days? Are you watching as much? I mean, you're on the road a lot. What do you sit down and try and make time for?
Honestly, my go-to is like, I never miss a show, was AEW Dynamite, because it's a very quick 2-hour show. You know, I always watch it on the road. But especially WWE in Canada, it's so much easier because like you watch like Netflix and stuff, so I can watch it like on the flight or what I mean, whenever I have time.
Who are you liking right now? Who's got your eyes like, I can't wait to see them on my TV when they come on, or your iPad or your phone?
Well, obviously it was like Swerve and like Ospreay, so I was like devastated when they're both not there. But like they have such a great roster that like anyone can step up. But I like every pay-per-view, I'm like, I want to watch the Swerve match or the Osprey match, you know?
Do you think there's too much? I mean, you're a fan of the old shows back in the day where, more is more was the famous slogan that guys like Jason Agnew and I've subscribed to as well. Like, sometimes more is just more. Do you think there's too much right now, or are you happy as a wrestling fan?
Oh yeah, of course. Like the more wrestling, the better. As long as all these guys are getting work, it's fine. But like for the consumer, for me, like it's hard to watch everything. Like I pick and choose, but I never miss like Dynamite. Like Raw used to be like so long, so like, but it's easier with Netflix because you can like fast forward.
Yeah.
Like the commercials and stuff, but yeah, because like when we were kids, like, it was like only like Superstars.
And you get like 1 hour a week, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Even like Raw, that's like 2 hours the whole week. It was just great, but it's always good, for the business that like there's more wrestling shows.
Last question for Ernie Vicente again. People can find you on social media, find your stand-up, and if you see Ernie Vicente come into your town, go see his show. He's one of us, friends. Who should John Cena's final opponent be in December 13th, and why is it Dominic Mysterio?
I was about to say Dominic Mysterio because he is one of my favorites. Like I remember back, like when did he start? Like, during the lockdown, right?
Yeah, it was right in the panty.
So back then, I was like, "Who's this kid?" Like MJF is like the same age. He's amazing, but now I love Dominic. He's like he surpassed MJF for me right now. Like he's like must see.
I love it, Ernie Vicente. If people want to find you on social, where do they go?
Oh yeah, so you can follow myself on Instagram at Ernie Vicente. But for the wrestling fans, on TikTok, I actually have a page called @FakeMysterioJr, where I do impressions of Rey Mysterio.
Wait a minute, you do a Rey Mysterio impression?
Yeah.
I do a Rey Mysterio impression.
Oh yeah?
What is yours like?
Hey, so my son Dominic last night, he betrayed me. He beat up our friend, his uncle, Edge, Adam Copeland. But now, when I got home, he's going to be grounded. No more Rhea Ripley.
That's not bad. That's really good, actually. See, we used to do Mysterio Peace Theater, Joe Aguinaldo and I.
Yes.
And so that was where it was like, Dominic, you're my son. Yeah. I can't fight my son.
Remember in the pandemic, the storylines were so whack.
Oh, they were so terrible.
Like who took the eye out? Oh, Rey Mysterio took the eye out.
Seth Rollins, took his eye out.
Yeah, so I was like, I just put the stupid video. I'm like,
Seth Rollins, last night you took my eye out. That is not very nice. But I have my eye on you, Seth. I'll be back.
Ernie Vicente, man, thanks for doing this. Great to see you, dude.
Oh my God, thank you. Thanks for coming to the show, Mike. You're the best.
It's time for the Wrestling Observer Insider with Dave Meltzer, McGuire on Wrestling.
Dave Meltzer, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
A lot better than Dwayne Johnson, apparently. Lost a fight to Taylor Swift this weekend.
Oh, my God. I felt really bad. I haven't seen the movie yet, but the first headlines that I read, which are basically like lowest first weekend, of his entire career, those are never good headlines. And I know he worked really hard on this movie. It was a passion for him. And I know that this was not like, a lot of his movies, they're there for box office. And this wasn't one of them. He really wanted to make a great movie, and he really wanted to get Oscar buzz, and we'll see how that works. But from a box office standpoint, and it was advertised pretty hard. He worked hard promoting it and everything. I mean, Taylor Swift probably had a big part to do with it. But it opened much, much lower than expected.
So we're producing the show on Sunday, as we do. So for those listening on the radio on Monday in some locations, that's probably going to be about where it is, probably around the $7 million mark. Do you think maybe it just has something to do more with the content? Maybe it's The Rock. I don't know. What do you think is
I don't think it's so much The Rock. I think it's the content of the movie. Mark Kerr's not a famous guy. They're doing a movie on a guy who wasn't famous. I mean, he was a star in MMA when MMA was not popular at all. And, Dwayne saw the documentary that HBO did. It was a very good documentary and wanted to make a movie. Wanted to make a movie based on Mark Kerr, thought it was a good story. And like I said, I don't want to judge the movie not having seen it. I had many friends who've seen it in the last couple of days, and most thought it was good.
I've heard great things about it, actually, from a movie standpoint. The people that have gone and seen it, all I've read is great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was 73% positive reviews from critics, which is good, but it's not overwhelming. It was the most risky performance of his career. He really tried to be a serious actor as opposed to an action star, but the open wasn't strong. I hate seeing him raked over the coals by it, but that's what happens. I mean, every headline I saw is, Taylor Swift knocked out The Rock.
I don't see a bunch of Taylor Swift fans going, oh, well, there's no Taylor Swift movie. I guess I'll go see this movie about
No.
But MMA guy.
But the difference is, and it's a big one, is that at like the big IMAX theaters where you have like this one big theater that's got all the whatever, you know what I mean? And then the other theaters, just normal theaters.
Right.
He was supposed to debut in those theaters. And then Taylor Swift comes along and he's moved to the smaller theater. So you don't have the big, impressive stuff. So people who go out and they want to see the big movie,
right,
in the big theater on Saturday night, or Friday night, they went to the Taylor Swift movie. They didn't go to the Dwayne Johnson movie. So that's where it did. It hurt. It's hard to say how much. I don't know that there's a big crossover between people who want to see Mark Kerr and Taylor Swift. But as far as the prime location, that was actually pretty legit.
Well, this is McGuire on wrestling. Let's talk about some wrestling here, Dave. AEW had their big 6th anniversary show for Dynamite this past Wednesday. We saw Andrade return, but we've also seen a lot of other things lately that I feel, and agree or disagree with this, I feel AEW, in the short time they've been around, are now trying to lean on this nostalgia of their own company. We've seen the Jurassic Express reunion. We've got Orange Cassidy back to being Orange Cassidy. We've got other characters that are kind of reverting. Even Hangman in the world title scene. Like, we're seeing a lot of stuff again that has been there before, but it seems to kind of be rehashed. Do you think this is a solid move for them to try and maybe keep the audience happy?
Obviously, the feeling from Tony Khan is that the Jack Perry heel turn was an optimum because he's going back to being the old character with Luchasaurus. Adam Page is the right guy for the right time as to be champion. I mean, there was, he had the choice between Adam Page and Will Ospreay, and the reality is Will Ospreay's neck was in bad shape, and Adam Page was the right choice because if he'd put Will or he put Swerve in that spot, then he'd kind of have problems because then he'd have to redo everything. And Adam's way more over this time, I think, than last time anyway. And he's a better performer now than he was then, too. Not that he wasn't always a good performer, but he's really picked it up a notch. So, in that sense, it's stuff that's done before, but guys get better and things change.
This coming weekend, we're heading to Australia for WWE and Crown Jewel headlining there. They're doing a SmackDown taping there as well. For all intents and purposes, the build is what it is. It's champions versus champions. It's trying to pick as Seth Rollins said, to lead the company in the next 20 years. I don't know how accurate that is.
But that was a little hyperbolic.
But nevertheless, I mean, what do you feel the buzz is going into this show compared to others? I'm not feeling the usual gotta watch it vibe, and I'm wondering if that's just me or if that's kind of consensus you're seeing among fans.
I think so. I think that's right. I think that WrestlePalooza was a much bigger show than usual, and this one, it's like it's one of John Cena's last matches with AJ Styles, but I think that, and it'd probably be a really good match, but I don't think it's like a Brock Lesnar match, right? Star power wise, it just doesn't match up. And then Cody and Seth, like neither belt's at stake. So it's just a match, it's like they're trying to get this champion versus champion thing and like with Tiffany and Stephanie. But at the end of the day, all the champions retain their titles. So there's no title changes in those matches. And, Cody and Seth's an interesting match, but the match, for Seth, the money match is CM Punk, Roman Reigns, not Cody. They don't really have a grudge. And for Cody, it's whatever, Drew McIntyre, Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, those are the ones that I think people want to see more. So like you said, I don't think that this is, I don't think it's going to do the numbers that WrestlePalooza did, put it that way.
The big announcement, of course, was made. You mentioned one of John Cena's final matches. Saturday night's main event going to be happening December 13th. The ticket prices for this event are remarkable, we'll say.
They're really high for essentially like not even a pay-per-view show.
Who's going to be the guy across the ring from Cena?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't think it's obvious. It's like I was told not Brock, who I thought it was going to be.
Right.
And, so he's done Randy Orton. He's done CM Punk, done Cody Rhodes twice. Who do we got? Dwayne Johnson? I mean, I don't see Dwayne Johnson looking like he's getting, Dwayne needs months to get ready for a match. I don't see him. That would be the biggest, but don't you think for Dwayne, he would only do it at WrestleMania? Is there somebody that I'm missing? Because I've been thinking about this. It's like somebody I'm missing. Is there some angle that I'm missing here? You know,
Well,
I mean,
all jokes aside, do I see this as being the last match guy? Probably not. I'd love to see Dom Mysterio get a run in there as one of these last ones just because he's so over right now.
You know, Dom could lose to him and it's fine. Sure. If you want to send Cena, you know, off with a win. Dom's got heat. And it's a TV match. Although it's not, you know, actually it's not even that because it's a Peacock match in the United States, which is their main market. I mean, you take that Saturday main event off of NBC and it's, I mean, evidently they think it's big because look at the ticket price they're charging and they'll get it. You know, I mean, that's the one thing is when it comes to the big shows, they're getting the ticket prices.
Gunther, yeah.
Gunther might be, it's new. It's different. Good chance for a really good match. I mean, of all the names I've heard, that might be the best one if it's not going to be, if they don't go and change their mind and go with Lesnar.
Well, especially if he puts him over too. If he puts Gunther over, that would be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and that'd be good. And he should. You know, in that sense, he's the one leaving. Gunther's the one staying. It's a nice feather in Gunther's cap to have a win over Bill Goldberg and John Cena, you know, in their retirements. You know, the guy who retires legends. Yeah, I kind of like that one right now. Yeah.
I want to talk about the influence of bigger companies, bigger stars on smaller companies. And when I say smaller companies, I really want to talk about these guys. I mean, we've got Dungeon Wrestling in Calgary. I've got great local indies around here. We've got CWE that goes across Canada. But I don't know how much you've heard coming out of Winnipeg Pro Wrestling lately, but they are on fire these days.
Oh, really?
They're doing some amazing shows. They've built up a great local roster. They bring in great guest stars. Their production is top notch. Like, I love watching their stuff online. And an interesting name is coming along, and she is going to be fighting Jody Threat for their championship, and that is Mercedes Moné.
Very interesting.
I'm wondering if we're going to go back to more belt collecting here moving forward.
Don't you think? I don't imagine.
An interesting shot in the arm for sure.
I don't imagine Mercedes Moné challenging for a championship and not winning it. The deal is, I think, to get her up to 11 belts.
I didn't know there was a deal for that.
Yeah. They've been talking about, like, Ultimo Dragon has the record with 10 and she has 9, and she wants to break the record.
Well, Jody Threat, a great Canadian talent who I've been seeing come up for the last few years here. Great run with TNA. She's been doing amazing things across the country. She works her tail off too. Just started a training school as well, and she's really someone to keep an eye on here moving forward. But I found it interesting, and I wanted to, if nothing else, being the Canadian contingency here, get WPW on your radar as well, because again, they're doing some pretty cool stuff. So if you have a minute, and I know you don't have many minutes, but if you do, you should really check out Winnipeg Pro, because I'm very interested to see their Rumble in the Burt has become like a really signature event, especially in Western and Central Canada. So yeah, it's really something worth checking out here. I did mention TNA there. There has been rumblings about a potential TV deal here with all the work they've been doing with WWE. Where do we see this being a possibility? And if so, does that become a credible threat against AEW?
They're hoping it will be. I don't know who they're talking to other than I know that CW was one of them, which would be good. That would be a good one. I think A&E was one of them, which, you know, WWE's does show Sunday nights on A&E, and the numbers are very, very low. CW, I think, would do all right, you know, because you got the synergy. You know, NXT is a big hit on CW, and maybe even if it's not as big, it's probably going to be bigger than anything else they're going to do in prime time on that night of the week. So it makes sense for CW. And again, you know, WWE has the blessings. There's a deal with WWE that, you know, WWE has the right to buy that company at any time they want. I think it's in their best interest right now not to buy the company. You don't want to, you know, encourage that, lawsuit that, UFC got by buying more companies, because you already bought AAA. Although that's an international company, but this would be buying I guess it's technically a Canadian company, right? But they perform in the United States. So that would be like you're buying an American company, so to speak. So I think it's advantageous to not be owning it and helping them to get TV. I mean, they're beholden to you. And I mean, they're beholden to them anyway right now at this point, because for TNA, it's made them far, far, far more relevant having this, having the presence on NXT television.
I've only ever had limited interactions with Anthem. I've never gotten any indication that they're interested in giving up the TNA property. I've never gotten any indication they're interested in giving up any of their properties.
There's been talk many times of selling. That's not new. I mean, Carlos Silva's even talked about it. Like the idea of selling. So, but yeah, no, I mean, they tried to get AEW to buy it, Tony Khan to buy it. So, which she was not interested in.
Talking to Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer and WrestlingObserver.com. Again, we're going to be talking all about the life and times of Gorilla Monsoon in just a few moments here. Dave, I know as the business rolls on here, you've had a ton of stuff to cover as far as the newsletter goes. What are some things people can read about in the latest issue?
The issue coming up, we've got a TV rating story, which is huge. It's actually one of the biggest stories of the year. The new television ratings in the United States have changed as of October 1st. They started sort of changing in September, but the official changeover was October 1st, and wrestling's taken a hit. Bad.
Okay, what is? I saw something about this, and again, we try not to delve too much in the ratings here because we just like what we like and don't what we don't. But I did see something about this. So, can you give me kind of the abridged version of what all this is shaking down as?
They changed the way that they figure numbers. They went from 45,000 homes to 45 to 75 million homes. NXT more than anything in the 18 to 49 demo, and AEW. Last Wednesday did, a number when I saw it was just like, it's one of those things where it floors you. It's like, oh my God. And then the more you study it and the more you study it, the demos and everything, it's like they went against a big, big baseball game, as did NXT. But we have the dual numbers for a couple of weeks on all of these shows. So I know that across the board, every show has taken a substantial hit. It's significant because if you have a 20%, or in the case of NXT, a 30-40% drop, that's your ad rates. You know what I mean? Your 1849 is down 40%, your ad rates are going to be down 40%. And so it's super significant to the value of these wrestling shows. AEW, it gets a lot of money from media, and they're under, they got till 2027 is the last year of the current deal. And how that's going to be viewed, I don't know. I mean, nothing until 2027 anyway, but it's a story it's a story so far. And how big. I've had some people go like, it's only a couple of weeks, but it's like when we got numbers for the exact same show on the exact same night, and one is a good number and one is a bad number, whereas everything else on TV, the numbers are pretty similar to what they always would be. There is what about wrestling did we not know, and was wrestling overcounted, or is wrestling being undercounted?
Well, it'll be interesting. I mean, I've been in rated markets for most of my career, and there's always a saying we've had when it comes to ratings that is, they're all BS unless you're number one.
Yeah.
He is Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer and WrestlingObserver.com. Dave, always a pleasure. You have a great week, and we'll talk to you again after Crown Jewel. Thank you, sir.
Okay, have a great week.
Coming up next, if you're listening on the podcast, you're going to get the entire conversation. And if you're listening on the radio, you're going to get as much as we can cram in of our talk with Brian R. Solomon, author of the brand new book, Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon. This is a really special conversation. I can't wait for you to hear it.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
Legends and Champions is your weekly fix to go old school, looking at the classic world of professional wrestling. From Hulk Hogan to the Hitman Bret Hart to the Icon Sting to the total package Lex Luger. We have it all each and every week on Legends and Champions, part of the Celebrate Wrestling Network. And it's available on a Wednesday with me, Andy Evans. See you there.
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, if you're a fan of wrestling magazines, if you're a fan of wrestling books, if you're a fan of wrestling history, podcasts, and all that in between, this guy has to be on your either watch, read, or listen list. Brian Solomon joins us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for being here. I look back at even just the publicity you've been doing for this show. So for you to make time for our little shows here, really appreciate it. But I've been purposely avoiding the interviews until you and I have our chat, because I wanted to try and not parrot anybody or do anything like that, but I mean, some of the people I know you've already talked to, you're on with Jim Cornette and Brian Last, you were on with JBL. I've seen you doing the whole circuit with this book, but what a book to do it with. Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon. I was telling you before we got started, I'm like 80% through this thing because it was a lot bigger book than I was expecting. And that's not a bad thing, because the fact that I'm that much through it and still with it, you got me. So it's a great read so far. But I think the most important thing to say off the beginning of this is, before we even talk about your history with WWE and your history in the wrestling business and being around that and as an author, what on earth made you choose to want to tell the story of Gorilla Monsoon, a guy that you didn't know?
Yeah, that was part of it. I came to WWE or the WWF as it was then known, in February 2000. And he had passed away in October 99. And actually, I came in for my first interview 10 days after his funeral. So, and I knew that he had been coming into the TV studio right up to the very end. His last TV studio recording date was at the end of September of 99. Wow. So, there was this sense of that I had just missed out on meeting him. That I had this bucket list of people when I started working there. I said, and I met them all. I said, okay, I have a wish list of people in the wrestling business. And it was like Ric Flair, Bruno Sammartino, Freddie Blassie, Bret Hart. Like, these literally, that was my list. And I met them all. And I knew that Gorilla was going to be impossible now because of that. And I also, in recent years, it's really struck me how little WWE really does with him. It's, there's never been a book like this. There's never been a documentary or anything like that. And so I thought it was way past due, considering how important he is to the history of that company.
And we'll dive into that a bit. For those that don't know, Gorilla Monsoon passed my generation and maybe most of yours as well. I mean, I never knew Gorilla Monsoon, the wrestler, at all. To me, I was in that generation that grew up. Oh, he's the friendly old man with the blue glasses that tells me all these wonderful medical terms for what part of the body's being worked on. And
the old man, it's funny. Meanwhile, I'm the age right now that he was when he called WrestleMania 3. So we were all very little back then.
That's gross. I hate that fact because, we were just talking about it the other day too. Like, if you go back, we were talking about like remembering WrestleMania 6 and, we're on 42 now. It's like, come on, that's just not fair. But the Gorilla Monsoon that you talk about in this book, I mean, you don't talk about Gorilla Monsoon, you talk about Robert Morella, and you even go further back than just him. You actually literally get like the origin story, talking about his family migrating over, talking about the history and the decisions to try and find a new life, and then how he eventually became who he was, and obviously his size and whatnot drove him towards professional wrestling. But you could have probably, and not saying this to knock it, but this book probably could have been maybe 3/4 of the length it is had you not decided to go into all that history. But how important was it to you to include all that?
Well, it's kind of a thing I do. I did the same thing with my Sheik book, Blood and Fire. I traced his family back to Syria, the old country. And part of it is, I'm kind of a ancestry.com person. I research my own family's history on there. I'm kind of obsessed with things like that, the origins of families. And, it was a theme in Blood and Fire, and I wanted it to be a theme in this one too, this idea of immigrant families coming here and to America, and within a generation or two, these bizarre kind of very unorthodox fulfillments of the American dream happen in very unexpected ways. So, and the thing about it too is that, I'm half Italian. I don't have the name, but on my mother's side, I'm half Sicilian, and that's really the family I grew up with and knew. So, to me, part of this book, and I mean this very much, was about reclaiming Gorilla Monsoon as an Italian American, because that's something that, was not really a huge part of his public persona. I mean, if you were watching closely, there's certain hints he dropped and things, you knew that he was probably Italian. But, because he had this Manchurian gimmick early in his career and he had the name that he had, he was never allowed to be that kind of ethnically Italian wrestler the way a lot of other wrestlers were of his time period. He was right in that clique with all those guys: Bruno Sammartino, Tony Marino, Dominic DeNucci, Baron Mikel Cicluna, all the Italian and Italian American wrestlers. But he couldn't be publicly Italian American. And so with this book, I took great pride in really putting that front and center in the narrative, just his ethnic background. I just thought that was something, that was important. I wanted to accomplish with the book.
And I got that sense too. And that was kind of the great thing about it. I had actually sent you a tweet too, even just getting through the introduction. I had already kind of gotten the feels when you talked about his relationship with Bobby Heenan, and we'll get there down the road here. But talking about his Italian heritage, you're absolutely right. I never put two and two together really until even putting this book in my hands and reading it. I knew the last name was Morella. I knew all that, but for some reason, being Gorilla Monsoon, being the larger-than-life wrestling character, being the commentator, and the presidents of the WWF, all this, you never leaned on that once, ever as
I'll
as
tell
a
you a
character.
story. Every now and then, like I said, there would be a subtle hint that would be dropped. I'll never forget this. And this is probably what put it in my head as a kid. When I was little, I'm watching wrestling, not 12, 13 years old. And I've tried so hard to find this episode, and I don't know which one it was. It was an episode of Wrestling Challenge, and Monsoon and Heenan were calling the action. And they were doing that thing where they'd be superimposed against the green screen background of the crowd, And Monsoon is sitting there and he's eating lunch. And Bobby turns to him and he's like, what are you eating there, Gorilla? What do you have? A bunch of bananas, And Gorilla goes, no, I don't. I got a little scarole, a little mozzarella, a little provolone, a little supersat. And I'm listening to him and I'm going, because I'm a kid. I grew up in a very Sicilian household. And I'm going, oh, man, that's all the stuff we eat. That's all the stuff Grandma and Grandpa are always giving me and stuff. Like, is Gorilla Monsoon, and he's saying it all the right way. Is Gorilla Monsoon Italian? From that age, I had it in the back of my head, and I always wanted to have a platform to say, hey, everybody, Gorilla Monsoon was very Italian. And this book is my chance.
Well, not only very Italian, but very, very well loved and respected all through his life. You take us through, growing up, obviously genetics kick in. He's this way larger than life human. Even going into high school, he's already, going over 6 foot, and he's becoming this massive human, literally. You also paint the story, though, of a pretty gentle giant for the most part. It seemed like, unless it would take a lot to cross Robert Morella, Gorilla Monsoon.
Yeah, and that was the interesting part of that, because I talk about how he was kind of an enforcer. He was what they called a policeman back then, which was the guy who would sort of be the protection. He would make sure nobody touched the promoter, which would happen back then. He made sure that if someone needed to be straightened out in the ring, or if someone even just needed to be tested in the ring, he was a guy that did that stuff. And I said in the book how it was very telling how, I want to say, both respected and intimidating he was, that he was almost never tested. I mean, there aren't a lot of stories of him having to put people in line. I mean, there's a couple of times there's an incident that happened in the Chuck Webner, Andre the Giant boxing match. I don't know if you got to that part yet. I think if you're,
I did. Yeah.
There's that, there's the stuff with Brody, there's the stuff with Ole Anderson at the Techwood Studios, which is a very famous story, which I tried to break down, but not much happened there. And that would be the case a lot of the time. It would get to a certain point and then people would back down. Davey O'Hannon told me a couple of stories. One of them are in the book about him kind of stretching these jokers that would show up at the locker room and wanted to, humiliate all the wrestlers in the ring. There were things like that, but he wasn't one of these guys that people really pushed him to that limit, because it would be just very foolish to do that.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Brian R. Solomon, again, the author of the brand new Gorilla Monsoon book, which is available now. Irresistible Force is what it's called. And Brian, you just mentioned talking to a few people here. To give you a quick piece of my relationship with pro wrestling to these days, I work with Bret Hart's sons and Bret himself with Dungeon Wrestling up in Calgary. So I've heard some great stories shared from Bret, but he's I won't say a big part of a chapter, but he's a part of a chapter in here when he's getting into the WWF and Gino kind of takes him under his arm and kind of helps him along the way. But I mean, that was just one example of a story of the guy behind the scenes. Before we even get to that point, though, like you said, he's the enforcer. He's the guy that, you wouldn't want to test. He's all these things, but he's also a guy that quickly becomes trusted very well by promoters, because he always seems to be a guy that they can turn to no matter what the job, no matter what the role is. They're like, put Gino in.
Yeah. Yeah, that was partly why they cut him into the company. He had 25% of ownership, and they knew they could put him in situations like that. He was the youngest partner by far. I mean, Arnold Skolin was probably the closest in age to him, and he was about 12 years older than him. So he was vital,
Mm-hmm.
and he could do these things. And they would plug him into scenarios like that, like when they needed an extra referee for the title unification match between Harley Race and superstar Billy Graham down in Florida. They sent him down there because they knew that he was a good person to have eyes on that match, which they didn't have 100% control over because it's interpromotional. Or like I mentioned with the Chuck Webner, Andre the Giant thing, they had Gorilla as Andre's corner man clearly to make sure that nobody got out of line in that match and that Andre was protected. And on that night, Gorilla actually had to enforce that. But there would be other things like that. In fact, even later, when Vince Jr. steps in and they're expanding, in the early years of the national expansion, before Gino's health started to slip, he was going out to all the new markets and things. And he was kind of Vince's boots on the ground in some of those new areas, partly because of the reasons I've given, and also partly because he was so well liked and respected by everyone in every territory that it was seen like this is a guy who has a reputation in the business. He can smooth things over. He's not an untested commodity or someone who's not really that well liked and trusted like Vince. So, he was the guy that would go into places like Calgary and Houston and St. Louis and stuff. So this role he filled for both generations.
And it's so funny being a young fan growing up and being oblivious to all this stuff, right? Like we just see him as the guy on TV, not knowing just how much was there. When did you first clue in that he had all this responsibility and was such an integral part of, I mean, let's face it, there literally probably wouldn't be a WWE had he not agreed to sell his part of the company, or maybe it would have been a vastly different thing. Like, how long did it take for you to discover how ingrained he was in the fabric of that company?
I knew because I worked there. So
right.
I knew from the years I was there, because even though I missed him, I was surrounded by people who had worked with him. He had just died. So all these people who were so connected to him that I got to know, Tommy Carlucci in TV, Jill Clark, who was the makeup artist, and Kevin Kelly, when he was still there, he had an office right around the corner from my office. There were all these people whose lives and careers he touched. So I definitely got that idea right from then and there. And I would hear stories. I even interviewed Vince a couple of times when I worked there. And Vince had said to me directly, and this is something that he finally publicly confirmed in the Netflix documentary, he told me that his father wanted Gorilla Monsoon to succeed him, that he had high hopes for him to do that. And so Vince had to sort of break through that to take over. So I knew these things. However, I didn't fully understand until I started researching the book how contentious that situation was. And like you said, how Gorilla very possibly could have been an obstacle to making that takeover happen. I had never thought that. I always assumed for some reason that it was this very peaceful transition of power. It was not. So that was a bit of a surprise for me.
it also, for me, explained why you would always see these involvements of Gorilla Monsoon or Arnold Skaaland or all these names that were associated with the company before Vince Jr. took it over. And again, it's just like, it's kind of like watching a decoder ring just unveil the whole puzzle of the wrestling business from a WWE standpoint back then. Because again, you just mentioned some of the names of the people behind the scenes that you mentioned in the book as well. You mentioned your research processes for this. How many years and I'm guessing years, or was it years, went into this? Like, were you always kind of cultivating this book in your head since you started working there and started hearing these stories? And from that point to actually putting out the plan, okay, here's going to be the book, what was the length of time and process for that for you?
Well, back then, I never knew that I would be a writer of books. I mean, when I was a magazine writer back then, I actually did my first book for WWE. It was WWE Legends, but I kind of thought of it as like a one-off. I didn't think I'd be coming back to this topic and other topics. I mean, this is my sixth book. And to tell you the truth, it was not an idea that I was incubating for a terribly long time. It was one of those things where when it finally came to me, it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't believe that I hadn't thought of it before. In fact, I was doing an interview for Blood and Fire when the subject came up, what's the next book going to be? And I have to give credit to Dr. Mike Lano. I don't know if you know him. I was on his podcast, and he was the one who said, hey, what about Gorilla Monsoon? Just like that. And it was like a door opened in my brain. It was like the most obvious thing to me in the world, and I just hadn't thought of it. I think maybe one of my subconscious reasons for not thinking of it was assuming that because he was such a cherished part of the WWE tapestry that they might make it difficult for me to do. I don't know why I would think that, but then I started thinking, well, wait a minute. They just did an Andre the Giant book, Pat LaPrade and Bertrand Hubert, and that wasn't a WWE book. So if they could do that, then I could probably do this. And I started putting the thought together in 2022. And so all that time from then till now, it's taken over my life. And I'm so glad that it's finally here because I can share it with everybody. Like in the process of writing it, I thought to myself, okay, Blood and Fire, that book I know was so critically acclaimed and people seem to really love it. And I thought, all right, well, this one's probably not, I mean, I wouldn't have said this publicly, but I'm thinking this one's probably not going to be as good maybe because, you know, I don't know, it's more of a mainstream character. There's more known about him. I'm thinking, oh, I'll do the best I can. And, you know, about a third of the way into it, even, I'm thinking, oh my God, I think this might turn out even better. Like I really didn't expect that. I'm writing it going, this is a way more compelling story than I thought it was going to be going in. Not that I didn't think it would be compelling, but I thought like, okay, maybe everybody knows these things. And then I started going, no, man, this is like, I'm uncovering treasure here and I've got to do this the right way. And I really started getting more and more excited about it the more I continued to work on it. But as any author will tell you, you never know when it's in a vacuum. You have no idea if other people are going to feel that way, if it's going to connect to other people. There were very, very, very few people who saw it before it was officially printed. So I'm very excited just to see how the public, reacts to this book.
Well, and again, like I said, you hooked me right off the start. And in your introduction, you talk about your first encounter with Bobby Heenan and just how that all went down. And I don't want to give away the story in the book, but I mean, you did a great job, I feel, of taking your personal experiences in your time with WWE or around these wrestling superstars and combining that with the facts that you've obviously spent a long time. And man, the quotes the stuff you pull. I mean, I know through Shut Up and Wrestle, you've got a great amount of contacts and friends as well. We've got a couple mutual friends and like Greg Oliver and Keith Greenberg and stuff like that, obviously. But it's like you know, there's one line in here you quote just randomly out of a Stone Cold podcast. You know, there's a line you quote out of a Slam Wrestling interview. There's a line you quote, just all this stuff. Like, I can only imagine, you know, if external hard drives weren't a thing, how much paper would be around your office at this point for this book.
Yes, and it's funny you say that because I'm kind of an old school guy, and I'm not saying that everything's on paper, but I'm 50 years old, and so I actually print out a lot of stuff just because I like to have it at arm's length right in front of me, and I could highlight stuff and circle things and all this. Otherwise, I'd have to be like Batman or something with 14 screens open in front of me, right? Or, opening and closing all these windows. For me, I can't speak for the young folks, but I like to have stuff spread out in front of me. So actually, even though of course, most of the things are online, if you had come down to my office and during that period, you would think I was a maniac because there were papers on the floor spread out around my chair, papers on the desk. When my office is downstairs in the basement area where we have like a rec room and things. Mm-hmm. And if we had company coming over and people were using that room, I had to be like, look, I'm sorry, it looks like a crazy person lives down there, but I'm in the process of doing this, but I will be the first one to admit that I make these jobs a lot more complicated than they probably even need to be in terms of the thoroughness that I go for. The Sheik book was the same way, where if you break it down, I'm really almost breaking their lives down almost to a weekly level. Like, that's how granular I try to get. And again, I don't have to do that. I'm just compelled to do that. And it makes so much more work for me, no question about it. And trying to keep it all straight. That's the thing. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever written a book or tried, but the idea when you do all the research, right, you get it all and you go deep into it. And that's all you're doing at first, digging everything up. Like you said, the Kerwin Silfies interview on Steve Austin's show, all the stuff that Greg sent me from Slam Wrestling, all these things. All right, you go through all that, you get it all collated, you interview 30, 40 people, you transcribe all the interviews months and months later. Now you have to sit there and, I would love to write a novel because I feel like then you could just flow. This is like backbreaking, painstaking, like every paragraph I'm thinking, oh, I got to look at this. I got to look at that interview.
You have to cross-reference everything, right?
Right. Like, every paragraph I'm thinking, oh my God, there was that great source. There's that website. I got to pull from that. And I'm outlining it all like, okay, check this, check that, check this. But it's not the kind of book where you could just sit there and just flow and write page after page. It's like carving out a sculpture, and it takes a really long time.
You know what, though? I think you did manage to find a flow. And what I'm
not saying it doesn't flow.
Well, no. But hear me out here. What I'm saying is that you give a great synopsis of every chapter. Well, I mean, every chapter is a synopsis. I get that. But you managed to find a way to make the story make sense with the information you're tossing in. It's almost like you give us the fact, then you give us the verification from source X, source Y. I just picture, like, with all your papers around, the bits of red yarn and the pins, going on the wall to make sure everybody's chipping in. That. Yeah.
It's not far from that.
Was there anyone specifically that you turned to on a repeated basis that maybe helped guide you along with some of this stuff, if you wanted to just make sure you got your facts right, or were you basically just self-auditing yourself over and over again?
Well, Valerie, his daughter, and Gorilla's wife, Maureen, were priceless in that regard. I mean, while she was alive, I would call Maureen randomly and just say, hey, can you tell me what you remember about, when Gorilla when Gino went to Australia in 1968, and she rattled off these stories and memories. I mean, the ability to do that at random, just sitting here like I'm here, or I still constantly text Valerie all the time, and she always answers me right away. I confirm things with her. They were both really great. They were obviously the people I went back to the most, but there would be others that were, Gary Capetto was very close with him, and I would ask Gary a lot of things. Davey O'Hannon, like I said. Tommy Carlucci was another one. He was someone who worked in TV production who got very close to Gorilla. He was his driver for a while and his like kind of handler on the road. And those would be people that I would definitely be checking in on and double checking things with and their memories of things.
Okay, I do want to talk about a couple quick stories here. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Brian R. Solomon, again, the author of Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon. Fantastic book, a very, very thorough book if you haven't gotten that vibe already from how we've been talking about it. Okay, I'm reading this, and I'm reading the story about Sylvester Stallone spotting Gorilla Monsoon. And did I read this right? Was he almost in the Thunderlips role, but not as Thunderlips, as something else?
As something else, right?
Yeah.
So they had a different conception of what that scene was going to be like. So I think originally they were thinking, especially if they were considering Gino, the idea would be that he would be this big, burly bruiser type of wrestler. And you could just imagine like Stallone just bouncing off of him and he's not moving. You could almost envision the scene in your head. Like I think about, I know maybe a lot of people haven't seen this movie like me, but there's a scene in the Robin Williams movie Popeye where he boxes this gigantic fighter who's like immobile and can't be hurt. They were probably going to go for something like that, but and Gino actually went out to California because they were flying back, or I can't remember which way they were going. They were either going out to California for a family vacation or coming back. Mm-hmm. And Stallone was there because he was going to Philadelphia to work on Rocky III, and there were things going on about the movie that were happening there. And they got to talking, and Gino actually went out and auditioned. He came out to Hollywood at his daughter's prodding, he went out there. And I think in the end, what happened was like what we saw happen. They wanted to go a different direction. They wanted to have the big muscle bound Adonis type of wrestler. Superstar Billy Graham was considered, but he was not in the best of shape at that point. Let himself go, and it wound up being Hogan. But yeah, it could have very well been Gorilla Monsoon as the wrestler in Rocky III.
That blew my mind when I read that because, if you look back, it's like, oh, it always would have been Hogan. It made all the sense in the world. Going back to the buyout when Vince McMahon Jr. takes over, you really do a great job of not only telling us about the details of the deal, but you also really give a vibe of the mood and how maybe, well, there's no maybe about it. I mean, Vince got a heck of a deal when he bought out the company from the other shareholders, including his dad.
Yeah.
Yet Gorilla managed to hold out to a degree. And the words were, I think it was Tommy that you quoted said, he wanted a guaranteed job for life. He wanted this much money and he wanted to be on TV. And we saw all those things from Gorilla Monsoon from that point on.
Yeah.
And you said earlier, it might have been more contentious than we thought it was, because to me, I always perceived it as Vince is like, of course, Gorilla, you're Gorilla Monsoon. We'll give you whatever you need. But then looking back at how things went with all the other partners, clearly that wasn't the case.
No. He was looking to strong arm everybody. There's no question about it. Even if it was an iron hand in a velvet glove, he was still looking to strong arm because, like I said in the book, it all started because Vince Sr. was looking to get out. He was just sick of it. He was done. He was tired. He was closing in on 70, and which is funny because Vince is 85 or whatever he is, 80 now, and he's still acting like he's 30 years old. But Vince Sr. was looking to get out, and his health was failing, and he just wanted to sell off his 50%. And so, he was looking for a buyer, and Vince, he was going to sell it to the partners at one point, which would have been great for Gorilla because he would have been at least 40% owner. You would have had Phil Zacco, who was old and retiring. You would have had Arnie Skolin as a minority owner, and Gorilla pretty much would have taken over at that point. And then Vince swept in and said, no, sell it to me. And by the way, not only do I want your 50%, I want everything. That wasn't even on the table at first, And so he had to convince these guys, and they were not thrilled at first. And the thing was, they fell in line, but Gino was the one who had the most to lose. That's why he was the obstacle to it.
And for all the business dealings, and I mean, us as fans, obviously not being on the inside, we all have our own opinions of how we think Vince McMahon operates or operated. It always seemed to be not a contention thing, but it almost seemed like a bizarre appreciation of Gorilla after the fact. Is that fair to say that once the deal was done, all of a sudden Gorilla was kind of held on high for a bit?
It is. I think what the thing about it was they grew to respect each other. Their relationship prior to the sale, when they were both working for Vince's father, was not anything warm. Like Gary Capetta told me, it was like there was Team Gino and Team Vinny. I mean, it really was like that. And in fact, that's why Gary feels like he got let go immediately after Vince took over, because he was like Gino's guy. And it was almost like sending a message. No, it's my time now. I'm going to put in Howard Finkel. He's my guy. That kind of thing. And so there was contentiousness in the early years. They were rivals. They absolutely were rivals. Vince himself, like he said in the documentary, Gorilla Monsoon saw me as competition, and he was right. But it was something where they definitely grew to respect each other. They grew to become friends and colleagues. But I know from Gorilla's side, especially from talking to family and friends, that there was always kind of a holding at arm's length. It wasn't like brothers or fathers and sons. It wasn't like, for example, Vince's affection for Freddie Blassie, how he loved him like a father.
Yeah.
It was never that. It was mutual respect. It was collegiality, but arm's length. And I can only assume that Vince felt the same way, honestly.
Well, I got to tell you, I can't wait to finish the last, I think I got maybe 100 pages left in this thing here, 150, but it's been a remarkable read. My listeners know, again, that I'm not a fast reader, so to commit to as much of this book as I did in the few weeks I've had it, thank you for the experience and the opportunity to do that. Thanks to Claire at ECW Press as well, who's been fantastic. She actually, when I first started working, doing this show as a national radio show, I had said, do you have any other wrestling books? And she actually sent me your Sheik book, and I read that, and I was like, this is incredible. So I know the reference point. This thing, though, is something that speaks directly to me as somebody that grew up with Gorilla Monsoon. Also as somebody who fancies himself, somebody who would give up everything tomorrow to be a regular wrestling commentator and announcer and just do this as a career. I mean, my radio job is fine, but most of all, I mean, you've been talking to a lot of people. I mean, the quotes you have on here, I mean, getting Brett to write the introduction on this was fantastic, because I love when Brett tells any story where, he's praising somebody as much as he does Gino in this one. You got Brett, you got Jim Cornette, again, somebody who, doesn't have that many of a strong opinion. I love Corny's take on a lot of stuff here. And so, I mean, it's just
doesn't hold back.
No, and even the way even what he wrote in the book is fantastic here. And then a guy that I just got to meet finally not too long ago, AEW came through Calgary, and Tony Chimmel's working as a producer and an agent with or some of the stuff they do. I don't know what he does backstage, but I got to meet him there anyways. And even him growing up with Joey Morella, who, I mean, obviously that was such a terrible loss for Gino, losing Joey. We only got a couple more minutes here. I can't recommend enough the story you've told, and for you to put as much of your heart and soul into this. Like I can feel it, Brian. I've never known you from Adam, short of listening to your show and following you on social media, but the amount of respect you have for not just the content and making sure you got your stuff right, but what it seems like you have for Gorilla Monsoon, it's palpable in this book. So congratulations. I think you got a fine piece of work here, and it's really great. So
thank you, Mike. I'm very glad to hear you feel that way. I hope others do. I did put my heart into it, and I'm very excited about it. I'm very proud of it. And when you do a book like this, it almost feels like you've given birth or something. And I'm releasing my creation into the world. So I'm excited.
Well, you know what? I can't wait to see. You mentioned this was an interview question you had before. Do you have another one in the coffer you're thinking of? Okay, this is going to be the next one after this, or are you just happy to get this out right now and maybe take a break for a bit?
I did 3 right on top of each other. There was actually a non-wrestling book in between Sheik and this, if you could believe it. I don't even know how I did that. So I'm just kind of enjoying taking a breath for now. I was thinking about doing something non-wrestling at some point next. I wasn't even kidding when I mentioned writing a novel, because I've never done that. And I've always wanted to try to do that, to write fiction. So I know a lot of people, would be disappointed if I didn't write a wrestling book, but I might do that. I might do a family memoir, like I've talked about my family. If I do a wrestling book, I do have a couple of ideas I didn't want to get too far into in case somebody tries to steal them. But I will say this, there was one that I've had on the back burner for years, which is to do a big coffee table art book on wrestling magazines.
Ooh.
Like the ones they've done on comic books and that sort of thing, and men's adventure magazines and Playboy. They do those books all the time. There's never been one on wrestling magazines, and I would love to go and really like 50s through the 90s would be like what I would look at, but there's less writing, but those books are expensive to make, those kind of books. And I've got to really sell somebody on that before I could do it. So we'll see, maybe.
Well, you know what? Now that we know each other a little better, I mean, I'm going to write out to you on social media again here. I hope we can have you on the show again in the future. Something comes up, maybe you feel you're right for. But I will tell you this same thing I told Keith Elliott Greenberg when we first met and became friends years ago. I've got a stack of your work, whether you're proud of it or not. I've got a bunch of the old WWE magazines kicking around with your name on them. And one time, I would love to. I remember you made the post after his passing, but I didn't realize that you were the guy that was there for, like, love or hate the guy. But one of my most favorite Hulk Hogan moments was him sitting at his desk in his office with all those belts on, and that's your stuff. So I mean, like, it's, I would love to pick your brain some more, but for those listening right now, Brian R. Solomon, Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon, available through ECW Press, wherever you get your books. Again, I don't know how they make money. $30 Canadian for all this. Like, this is an amazing book. Get your hands on it. Brian R. Solomon, thank you so much, sir, for making the time for us here today.
My pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me.
If you've never listened to Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian R. Solomon, or Brian Solomon, the middle initial thing, it's so he can sell books, because there's another Brian Solomon out there that's an author that's written a lot of books too. But anyway, Brian R. Solomon, a great guy to listen to, really cares about what he talks about, and really loves talking about pro wrestling. If you don't get the vibe from the conversation we had, then I don't know what will get you there. Because as much as it was fun to talk about, obviously, Gorilla Monsoon and what the book is about, I don't know about you, but I was kind of fascinated by his process and how he puts everything together. And if you see this book and if you get this book, you're going to feel it. This is one of the most heartfelt biographies I've ever read that wasn't either by the person it was about or by someone that knew the person. Like, he really went out of his way on this book. Thank you for going out of your way to listen to the show, to give us your listening ear and time. Thanks so much to Ernie Vicente for being a part of the show. Ernie, you're a gem. You're way funnier than I thought you would be, to be 100% honest. I was like, this guy listens to this show, and he's a comedian, and he likes this show. This can't be good. But no, he's great. So if you get to see Ernie Vicente anywhere, do it. I'm just kidding, of course. There are a ton of great people from all over that listen to this show and our podcast every week, and we can't extend our appreciation to all of you enough. That does it for this week. We're back next week. Until then, as always, thanks for listening and letting me do what I do. Play safe, drive safe. Abyssinia.
McGuire on Wrestling. Online and on the radio. Listen to the show Mondays at 4 p.m. Mountain Time at CKXU.com, wherever you get your podcasts, and at McGuireShow.com.